Barbara rose at the head of the Christmas table, a DNA report in hand, her voice slicing through the chatter.
This document proves Elizabeth is not my daughter. She will be removed from the family trust immediately.
The 14 relatives froze. Forks paused midair. Aunt Carol gasped, her hand flying to her chest. William leaned back in his chair, a smirk spreading across his face. George's fork halted halfway to his mouth. Confusion creased his brow. Elizabeth's wineglass paused just short of her lips. She took a slow sip, her hazel eyes steady over the rim. On the white tablecloth beside her plate, her phone screen glowed with a new email notification. Elizabeth's gaze dropped to it. The corner of her mouth lifted almost imperceptibly. She set down her glass and reached for the phone, her motion calm and deliberate. The email was from the lab.
For months I suspected the truth, so I took matters into my own hands. I had a private DNA test run. The results arrived this morning. 0% related. She is not my blood.
Aunt Carol clutched her napkin. Uncle Mike frowned deeply at Barbara. The other relatives murmured in disquiet.
Looks like the outsider finally got caught. I always knew you didn't belong at this table.
Elizabeth ignored him, her thumb hovering over the email, but a memory tightened her jaw. 3 months earlier, she had walked past the bathroom and stopped cold at the sight through the cracked door. Barbara stood holding Elizabeth's toothbrush over an open DNA swab kit, her expression cold and calculating. Elizabeth had stepped back silently, her heart slamming against her ribs. A seed of dread took root. Now at the Christmas table, that seed had grown into a quiet, unshakable resolve. The email from the lab glowed on her screen like a key to a locked room. The morning after the toothbrush discovery, Elizabeth moved with lethal calm. She swabbed the inside of her own cheek, sealed the sample, and labeled it carefully. Then she slipped into Barbara's bathroom and lifted a hairbrush from the drawer.
If she's planning to use a test against me, I'll have a test of my own.
3 days later, she sat across from Daniel Reeves at a small coffee shop.
You're asking for a maternity comparison and a flag on your name? That's unusual.
I need incontrovertible truth. My mother is capable of anything.
Daniel nodded, tucking the envelope into his bag. He understood the gravity. He promised results within months, the samples sealed and secure until that moment. Elizabeth left the cafe carrying a receipt and the quiet certainty that she had done everything she could. Back at the dining table, Elizabeth tapped the email open, the screen filled with Daniel's careful wording. She scrolled through the first few lines, her expression unreadable. Then the faint smile on her lips deepened. She read the confirmation she had been waiting for.
The trust will be restructured before the new year. No outsider will receive a cent.
Aunt Carol shifted, noticing Elizabeth's focus on the phone. George glanced over, his brow furrowing. William followed their gaze, his smirk flickering when he saw Elizabeth smiling at her phone.
Elizabeth, are you listening? This concerns your future, or rather your lack of one.
Elizabeth raised her eyes slowly from the screen. She set the phone face up on the tablecloth. The email's subject line was visible to anyone near. Confirmation of sample analysis. Daniel Reeves.
Oh, I'm listening, Mother. More than you know.
Elizabeth pushed back her chair and stood, phone raised, her voice cutting through the silence.
This is from Daniel Reeves, the lab technician. I'm writing to confirm the sample submitted under your name was contaminated. It did not come from you. The DNA matched a deceased neighbor, a male sample collected from an old hairbrush.
Barbara's face went paper white. The DNA paper slipped from her fingers and drifted to the floor.
The sample my mother, Barbara Caldwell, submitted was not my DNA. It was a deliberate falsification.
Aunt Carol clutched her napkin to her mouth, a strangled gasp escaping her throat. Uncle Mike half rose, his face dark with accusation, staring at Barbara.
The lab confirms the truth. My mother submitted a fake sample to erase me from the family.
The table erupted. Forks clattered, chairs scraped, voices overlapped in disbelief. Barbara's mouth opened, but no words came. She stared at Elizabeth as if seeing a ghost.
You forged that email? It's a fabrication to save yourself?
If you think it's fake, let someone independent verify. Aunt Carol, you trust your own eyes, don't you?
Barbara lunged across the table, but Elizabeth pulled the phone away and extended it toward her aunt.
Check the sender address, the lab logo. Tell everyone what you see.
Aunt Carol took the phone with trembling hands, peering at the screen through her reading glasses.
The laboratory name is legitimate. The email domain matches what's on their website.
And this email contains a second report, a DNA maternity test comparing me to my mother.
Barbara's face drained of color entirely. She grasped the back of her chair as if the floor had dropped.
I commissioned it the day I caught her stealing my toothbrush. The results are ready to be read aloud.
The dining room fell into a suffocating silence. The Christmas tree lights blinked, waiting.
The second report, maternity DNA comparison. Subject A, Barbara Caldwell. Subject B, Elizabeth Caldwell. Shared DNA, 50%. A complete maternal match. She is my mother beyond any doubt.
The table erupted with murmured confusion. Aunt Carol clutched her chest. Uncle Mike's face hardened.
Then what in blazes was that paper you were waving, Barbara?
Barbara swayed, her face gray. The entire scheme lay exposed like a gutted fish.
The same lab that revealed her deception now proves she lied about everything.
This makes no sense. Why would she do this?
I've been asking myself that question ever since I caught her with my toothbrush.
Barbara's crumbling composure finally shattered. A sob tore from her throat, but no one reacted. George remained motionless, his eyes boring into his wife. Only the Christmas lights moved, blinking over the ruins of dinner.
The email also included a comparison between Barbara and William. Their shared DNA is just 25%, which means they are half-siblings. William is not my father's biological son.
The words dropped like a bomb. The room froze in a vacuum of breath and disbelief.
That's a lie. It has to be.
Barbara could not meet his eyes. She collapsed against the sideboard, her sobs twisting into ragged breaths.
Daniel Reeves attached the full report. I have the printed copy right here.
She slid the thick envelope across the polished table, past the shattered china and cooling beef. George watched the white rectangle come to rest in front of him, as if it were a live grenade. George's hand hovered above the envelope, trembling. The entire family stared at that paper, weight crushing the air, while the Christmas tree lights blinked on and on. With trembling hands, George grasped the envelope. He tore it open as the room held its breath. He unfolded the crisp report, his gaze tracing the printed names and percentages with dawning horror. The numbers blurred, then sharpened into a truth that made his jaw lock. Confusion, shock, then a cold, silent rage settled over his features like a winter frost. The Christmas tree lights kept blinking, their soft glow a cruel contrast to the destruction unfolding. A tear traced a path down his cheek and blotted onto the paper, smearing the ink. His free hand gripped the table edge so hard the wood creaked. Barbara's sobs quieted into helpless whimpers, but he didn't turn his head. Elizabeth stood motionless, her eyes never leaving his face, her own expression unreadable. The silence pressed in from all sides, an unbearable weight no one knew how to lift. William's chair screeched back. He lunged forward and ripped the report from his father's limp hand. He scanned the lines, his breath coming in sharp gasps, his face draining of color as the truth hit.
No, this is insane. This is fake. Tell me it's a lie, Mother. Tell me this is another scheme of hers.
Barbara stammered, words failing her. All she could do was shake her head, tears streaming anew.
He spun toward Elizabeth, fingers stabbing the air. You did this! You planted this to destroy our family!
Elizabeth's voice was ice. I only brought a mirror. What you see in it is your own reflection.
He grabbed the edge of the table, knuckles white. You've always been jealous. You couldn't stand that she loved me more.
The room erupted again, Aunt Carol weeping, Uncle Mike calling for calm, but no one was listening. And the Christmas tree lights just kept blinking, indifferent to the wreckage beneath them.
George's voice cut through the chaos, low and lethal. Is it true, Barbara? All of it?
The affair, yes, it was one time a mistake, 28 years ago, with a man from the Wilmington deal. I buried it. I never wanted anyone to find out. I thought it would stay hidden forever.
George's expression didn't change, but his eyes died a little more with every syllable.
So I'm not his son? You let me believe I was his heir all my life?
Aunt Carol pushed back her chair, her face blanched. Uncle Mike rose heavily beside her.
We can't. We should go. This is too much.
Please, don't leave. I didn't mean for this to come out. It was all to protect our family.
The dining room was already half empty, chairs shoved back, napkins discarded. The Christmas feast lay in ruins. Only the tree lights still shone, oblivious, blinking over the smoldering wreckage of 3 decades of lies. Aunt Carol and Uncle Mike slipped out the front door, their goodbyes swallowed by the cold night air. Only Elizabeth, Barbara, George, and William remained, marooned in the wreckage of the feast. William paced near the sideboard, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Elizabeth didn't move. She stood beside the Christmas tree, arms folded, her calm unnerving. George still sat at the table, rubbing his temples over the crumpled report. Barbara's sobs had withered into a hollow, rhythmic tremor.
George's voice broke the silence, low and frayed. You lied for 28 years.
Barbara opened her mouth, but only a ragged breath escaped, her throat sealed by guilt. William stopped pacing and turned, his glare shifting from Elizabeth to his mother, something wild in his eyes. The Christmas tree lights blinked on, filling the silence like a ticking clock waiting for the next fracture. George pushed back his chair and stood, facing Barbara with an expression that could cut glass.
Why? Why did you try to destroy Elizabeth?
Barbara's hands twisted the hem of her dress. The words came out in a broken rush.
I wanted William to inherit the trust. He was always my favorite. I knew Elizabeth would contest everything.
A bitter laugh escaped William, but it died in his throat, replaced by something darker.
The affair was buried, but when Elizabeth started asking questions, I panicked. The fake test was supposed to remove her permanently.
George stood motionless, his hands at his sides, his face a mask of pain layered over rage. Elizabeth watched, the weight of years pressing on her shoulders, but she didn't look away. The Christmas tree lights flickered, casting fractured shadows across the ruins of the dinner. No one spoke. The truth had been fully excavated, and what remained was only the reckoning.
You used me. My whole life, I was just a pawn in your sick game.
Barbara flinched, unable to meet his eyes, her frame shaking with silent sobs.
You made me hate my own sister for a lie you constructed. And you couldn't just take it. You had to humiliate us all.
I defended myself from a woman who tried to erase me. That's all.
William's face twisted, caught between rage and the dawning horror of his own words.
I never wanted to hurt you, William, but I couldn't let her win.
It's too late for that. You've destroyed everything.
He backed away, his chest heaving, looking at the shattered family as if seeing it for the first time. The air felt too thick to breathe, the house collapsing around them in silence. George's voice cut through the suffocating silence, low and irrevocable.
You've destroyed everything. I need time to decide what comes next, but right now, I want you out of this house.
Barbara's face crumbled, her hands reaching toward him as if to grasp at a lifeline.
Please, George, it's Christmas. I made a terrible mistake, but we can talk about this. Don't send me away.
There is no more talking. You buried your lies for 28 years, now bury your pride and leave.
She looked desperately toward Elizabeth, a flicker of hope for an ally that died instantly.
I have nothing to say to you. You tried to erase me. I won't be your shield now.
William watched from the corner, his face a mask of conflicted pain, saying nothing.
Go before I say something I can't take back.
The Christmas tree lights blinked steadily, the only motion in the frozen room as Barbara clutched her chest, undone. Barbara drifted toward the front door, her overnight bag bumping against her leg, sobs reduced to shallow breaths. She pulled open the heavy door. Icy air sliced into the foyer, and she paused on the threshold, trembling. Elizabeth stood at the window, her back to the door, her reflection ghostly against the falling snow. A single silver tinsel strand fell from the Christmas tree, soundless onto the hardwood. A choked cry escaped Barbara, and then she stepped into the night, the door swinging shut. The latch clicked with a finality that rang through the silent house. The tree lights blinked, casting fractured shadows over the scattered plates and overturned chairs. At the window, Elizabeth watched the snow swallow her mother's retreating form, unblinking.
From the dining room, George's voice rasped like a stranger's. It's over.
No one answered. The night held its breath, and the Christmas tree blinked on, indifferent. George sank into the chair again, the open report like an accusation on the table. Elizabeth turned from the window, her silhouette haloed by snowlight.
Why didn't you come to me, Elizabeth, before it came to this?
His voice was raw, not accusing but hollow. William shifted near the sideboard, listening.
Because you wouldn't have believed me without proof. She had you convinced I was the problem.
She walked toward the table, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood.
For years, she poisoned everything. I needed something unassailable, something even she couldn't twist.
She refilled her wine glass, the dark red liquid catching the tree lights.
When I caught her with my toothbrush, I knew her plan. I had to build a defense that left no room for doubt.
William stared at the floor, his jaw clenched. He didn't speak. George closed the report, his hand lingering on the cover as if it might bite. The weight of the truth hung between them, unresolved.
The trust will be revised. You will have what is rightfully yours, and more if you want it.
I never wanted the money, Dad. I only wanted the truth.
I should have protected you. All those years I let her make you the enemy. I'm sorry.
Elizabeth looked at him, then at the closed report. Her voice softened but lost none of its strength.
It wasn't your fault alone. She fooled everyone, but I couldn't let her win.
William, standing apart, let out a bitter half-laugh under his breath.
Lucky you. At least you still have a father.
William, that's enough. None of this is Elizabeth's doing.
William clamped his jaw shut and turned away, but he didn't leave. The room held its breath. The Christmas tree lights blinked on, illuminating the three of them in a fractured stillness. Elizabeth drifted back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the dark glass.
All those years I begged for her love, and she only ever saw me as a threat.
The snow fell thicker now, erasing the tracks her mother left on the driveway.
I didn't want to become the woman who could plan this, but she left me no choice.
Behind her, George sat motionless, the closed report a tombstone between them.
The truth didn't set me free. It just made the cage visible.
William remained apart, arms crossed, staring into the cold fireplace.
Maybe one day he'll understand, or maybe he'll always hate me for what I exposed.
The Christmas tree lights pulsed softly, indifferent and eternal. And Elizabeth watched the snow bury the past, knowing nothing would ever be the same. Slowly, the camera pulled back, revealing the full dining room in all its ruin. The Christmas tree stood guard, a silent sentinel over the banquet of broken dreams. China plates held uneaten meals, Wine glasses lay in red puddles, and the air hung thick with what could never be unsaid. The DNA report rested on the white linen, its damning percentages now just ink on a page. A fragment of tinsel shimmered on the floor, catching the tree's flicker like a final tear. The lights blinked on, their rhythm indifferent to the shattered family they illuminated. The window was empty now, the snow outside erasing all footprints. The house was silent, holding its grief in the hollow of the night. The image began to dim, the tree's glow shrinking to a soft ember, and the screen went black. The Christmas tree lights flickered once more, then steadied, holding their small, stubborn vigil. The DNA report lay exactly where it had fallen, its truths no longer weapons, only artifacts. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the driveway in pristine white, as if the night were trying to forget. Inside, the house held its breath. The rooms were hollow, yet something lingered. The echo of a family that had been. Elizabeth would leave soon, carry the truth forward like a hard-won scar. George would try to rebuild piece by fractured piece. William would wrestle with ghosts that wore his mother's face, perhaps forever. And Barbara, alone in the cold, would learn that some doors, once shut, never open again. The Christmas tree lights continued their quiet blinking, marking time over the silence. And then the last ember faded, taking the house back into the dark. The truth had cost them everything. But at least it was the truth. The house stood in an icy hush, the front door sealed shut, the Christmas tree still shimmering in the corner. The colored lights flickered slower now, as if the tree itself was finally growing tired of its vigil. The DNA report lay forgotten, covered now by a dusting of fine white powder that had fallen from the fireplace mantel. Outside, the snowfall had stopped, leaving the world in a thick, soundless blanket of white. The dining chairs remained pushed back, as if the ghosts of the meal were still seated, frozen in witness. One last bulb flickered, then went dark. The tree surrendered its glow to the creeping shadow. The room plunged into near darkness, only the faint blue of the snow outside breathing through the window. The house held its breath, a tomb of tinsel and truth, waiting for a dawn that would bring no repair. And so the Christmas night ended, not with a gift, but with the brutal, necessary excavation of the truth. The screen fades to black one last time, the story sealed in silence.